We're taught that control is strength, that if we plan enough, work hard enough, stay ahead, everything will fall into place. But what if that's a lie? What if control, the thing we cling to the most, is the very thing making us anxious, exhausted, and afraid? This is a journey into what happens when we let go, not because we failed, but because we're finally ready to face life as it is. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from action, but from anticipation. You plan, you rehearse, you measure, you try to make life behave, to bend to your design. And for a moment you feel powerful. But then something breaks, something falls apart, someone disappoints you, and suddenly you're not in control. This is where most people panic, but it's also where a deeper kind of wisdom begins. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This video is not about how to gain more control. It's about how to let go of the illusion of it, and what you find when you do. The seduction of control. We live in a world addicted to control. From the moment we wake up to the second our heads hit the pillow, we try to shape our reality like sculptors obsessed with the perfect outcome. We schedule, we plan, we optimize, all in pursuit of one thing, the feeling of certainty. But here's the hard truth. Control is a seduction. It feels powerful, but it isn't real. It's the psychological sugar that keeps us addicted to a version of life that doesn't exist. The moment we believe we have control, we begin fearing the loss of it. And so, the more we seek it, the more fragile we become. Life, in its rawest form, doesn't bend to our expectations. It surges with change, randomness, and complexity. And yet, we fight this with spreadsheets, with apps, with rituals. Why? Because uncertainty makes us feel small. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." When we feel uncertain, we feel vulnerable. And vulnerability, for most of us, is equated with danger. So we build castles of control around ourselves, walls of plans and expectations and if this and then that thinking. We think if we control our surroundings, we will be safe. If we control how others see us, we will be loved. If we control the outcome, we will be happy. But reality isn't a machine to be programmed. It's a living, breathing phenomenon. And trying to control it is like trying to hold on to mist. Let's take a simple analogy. Imagine driving a car through thick fog. You can only see 10 feet ahead, but you drive anyway. Why? Because you trust your ability to respond, not your ability to predict everything that will happen. Control is not about seeing the entire road. It's about trusting yourself with each bend. We think life is a chessboard, predictable, strategic, know the rules and you win. But more often, life is a dice game, unpredictable, chaotic, and that terrifies us. So we cling to control like a shield. But in doing so, we misunderstand the true source of strength. It's not control that makes us powerful. It's presence. It's not the ability to script the future, but the capacity to meet it fully when it arrives. Alan Watts once said, "The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless." This is the start of our journey, not toward more power, but toward real presence. Origins of illusion. To understand why control feels so essential to us, we have to go back, deep into our evolutionary past. Picture the earliest humans surrounded by uncertainty. Every sound in the dark could be a predator. Every unknown plant might be poison. Every stranger could be a threat. In that environment, the brain wasn't trying to thrive. It was trying to survive, and survival meant prediction. The more you could anticipate danger, the more likely you were to pass on your genes. So the brain developed a knack for pattern recognition. It started drawing connections, some accurate, some superstitious, just to make sense of a world that felt uncontrollable. Fast forward to today, and that same brain still lives inside us. It's ancient hardware running modern software. The threats may have changed, but the instinct remains. We try to control our inboxes, our calendars, our diets, our relationships. not because they're inherently dangerous, but because unpredictability still triggers the same primal alarms. The brain doesn't distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and an unread email. Uncertainty feels unsafe. This is the foundation of the illusion. We mistake safety for control. Control in this light becomes the modern equivalent of the campfire, something to huddle around, to shield us from the wild unknown. But here's the catch. It's a false fire. It warms us temporarily, but it doesn't actually tame the wilderness around us. Worse, the illusion of control breeds entitlement. We believe that if we do all the right things, work hard, follow the rules, be good people, then life should go our way. And when it doesn't, we're not just surprised, we're shattered. We say, but I did everything right. That's the control myth whispering in your ear. It tells you that life is a transaction, not a mystery, that you can outsmart chance, that if you're just careful enough, you'll never suffer. But suffering is not a glitch in the system. It's part of being alive. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The more we build our lives around the fantasy of control, the more ill-prepared we become for the truth of unpredictability. The more we demand certainty, the more life feels like a personal affront when it doesn't comply. Control feels empowering because it offers a story, one where you are the main character and everything bends to your will. But that story is fiction. And like all good fiction, it eventually ends. So where do we go from here? We start by seeing clearly, by recognizing that the desire for control isn't weakness, it's human. But it's also a response to fear. And the only way to step out of fear is not through domination, but through understanding. Because when we understand the roots of control, we no longer have to be ruled by it. We can begin the slow, powerful shift towards something far more honest. Acceptance. Not passive resignation, but the brave, steady act of being with reality as it is. And that's where we'll go next. If this has already stirred something in you, consider subscribing. We explore ideas like this every week. Philosophy that doesn't just inform, but transforms. The mechanics of control, how it shapes our lives. Look closely at your daily life and you'll see it. The choreography of control. It hides in your routines, your conversations, your self-image. You might not call it control, you might call it discipline, or planning, or leadership. But beneath the surface, what you often find is fear, wearing a clever disguise. We micromanage, we overthink, we pre-write conversations in our heads before they happen. Why? Because unpredictability feels like risk, and risk feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. Marcus Aurelius warned against letting the mind become a slave to expectation. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But most of us reverse that. We try to control the world so we don't have to regulate ourselves. In relationships, we control how others perceive us. We curate responses. We smile when we're aching. We apologize when we mean to speak up. Harmony becomes a performance. Authenticity, a liability. At work, we obsess over outcomes, not because we love excellence, but because success protects us from judgment, from failure, from shame. Control becomes a mask for insecurity. Even within ourselves, we try to control what we feel. We chase happiness like a drug and suppress grief like a disease. We judge emotions as good or bad. But as Carl Jung wrote, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Control is not peace, it's tension dressed up as safety. And yet letting go feels like death. Because if we're not controlling, who are we? What's left when we stop trying to manage every outcome? That's the real fear. That surrender means collapse. That if we loosen our grip, we'll fall apart. But Alan Watts reminds us, to have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you'll sink. Instead, you relax and float. We're not sinking because we're letting go. We're sinking because we keep tightening. Letting go isn't losing control. It's realizing you never had it to begin with. And that realization isn't weakness, it's clarity. Letting go, the courage to surrender, Letting go is one of the most misunderstood acts in the human experience. It's often confused with weakness, passivity, or resignation. But true letting go, the kind that transforms you, is an act of strength. It is not the absence of care, it's the presence of wisdom. Lao Tzu, the ancient Taoist sage, said, "By letting it go, it all gets done." The modern mind resists this. We are taught that effort equals control, and control equals safety. But what if that's backwards? Imagine a trapeze artist. To fly, she must release the bar she's holding before catching the next. That brief moment, suspended in the air, with nothing to hold on to, is what surrender feels like. Terrifying, liberating, honest. We fear letting go because we think it will undo us. But the reality is, clinging does far more damage. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving in to reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. It's cooperation with the nature of things. You stop controlling others, not because you no longer care, but because you recognize the illusion of control in the first place. You begin to trust that people can walk their own paths, just as you must walk yours. You stop forcing timelines on healing. You stop demanding explanations from chaos. You loosen your grip and you start to breathe. Carl Jung believed that what we fail to surrender consciously returns as fate. The unlived, ungrieved, and unaccepted will erupt somewhere. If not in your mind, then in your body, your relationships, your dreams. Letting go is the first act of integration. It's how we make room for clarity to arrive. Not from force, but from space. Letting go is not an endpoint, it's a practice. You let go in conversations by not defending every opinion. You let go in love by not trying to own or fix the other. You let go in healing by not rushing the pain away. And every time you do, you create a pocket of peace, a clearing for something real to enter. Letting go is not collapse, it is opening. Letting go is not death, it is rebirth. It is the sacred act of saying, I trust that I will meet what comes. And from that place, something extraordinary begins. Presence, the power of response, redefining strength. If letting go is the act of releasing what you cannot control, then response is the art of reclaiming what you can. This is where true strength emerges, not from control, but from conscious choice. Epictetus, the Stoic slave-turned-teacher, said it with brutal clarity. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You see, control is a myth, but response is real, and response, when chosen deliberately, becomes the most powerful force you possess. Think about it. You cannot predict every crisis. You cannot avoid every wound, but you can choose how you meet each moment. Most people don't respond. They react, automatically, defensively, habitually. Why? Because they are still trying to wrestle life into obedience. But the wise, the ones who learn to dance with the world instead of dominate it, they learn the sacred pause. That half second between stimulus and reaction, that space where the whole future lives. Response is not silence, but selection. It's not inaction, but integrity. To respond is to say, I see what's happening, I feel it, I am not afraid of it, and now I will choose, not based on fear, but on who I want to be. It is the philosopher's sword, silent, precise, unfazed. Carl Jung taught that what we fail to make conscious, we enact as fate. And this is what he meant, that our automatic reactions are our unconscious selves ruling us. Response is the rebellion. It is the awakening of agency, of clarity, of presence. When you learn to respond, not react, you stop mirroring other people's chaos. You stop being pulled by every external push. You begin to live by inner truth instead of outer noise. Alan Watts, the Zen-inspired philosopher, said, the more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. And reaction is permanence. It's repetition. But response is aliveness. It adapts, it listens, it flows. This is where your strength lives, not in being rigid, but in being ready. Not in being certain, but in being conscious. To respond is to live your life like a question mark, not an exclamation. Curious, present, evolving. It's not the strong who survive the storm. It's the flexible. And so we arrive at the doorway of real power, not the kind that controls outcomes, but the kind that co-creates with them. If this part made you pause or reflect, drop a comment. What spoke to you the most? We read everyone, and this is a space for seekers, not experts. Live without control. Practice inner freedom. So much of human suffering doesn't begin with pain. It begins with resistance to pain. We don't just hurt, we panic that we're hurting. We don't just feel lost, we blame ourselves for not having a map. We don't just face uncertainty, we treat it like a personal failure. Why? Because we were conditioned to believe that a good life is a controlled one. We want predictable relationships, guaranteed success, and tidy emotions. But life, real life, is fluid. It bends, breaks, rebuilds, evolves. And the moment we try to freeze it into certainty, we start breaking ourselves. But what if we inverted the equation? What if inner freedom came not from control, but from connection? Connection to the moment, to ourselves, to the rhythms of life that don't follow our timelines, but have their own wisdom. This is the wisdom of Lao Tzu, who said, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow." Inner freedom is the ability to remain grounded in the middle of that change. It's not about being unaffected. It's about being undiminished by what affects you. To live without control is not to live in chaos. It is to live in collaboration with something deeper than prediction. Presence. You still make plans, but you hold them lightly. You still care deeply, but without demand. You still pursue goals, but without turning them into prisons. This is what Alan Watts called the wisdom of insecurity, a kind of spiritual sobriety that recognizes the more we chase guarantees, the more brittle we become. Instead, we begin to live by trust, not blind optimism, not naive hope, but trust that no matter what comes, we will meet it with clarity, with courage, with compassion. And the irony, that's when life actually begins to open. Not because we forced it, but because we finally stopped trying to own it. Freedom is not the ability to script your destiny. It's the strength to walk into the unknown and still stay whole. And that leads us to the final chapter. Integration, returning to the world with open hands. So, after everything, what now? You've seen through the illusion of control. You've felt the tension of letting go. You've tasted the quiet strength of presence. But life doesn't pause to reward you for your insight. The dishes still need to be washed. Emails wait. People misunderstand. The world rolls forward. There is no enlightenment break room, no sign that says, "You made it. Welcome to ease." The world remains wild, but you return to it changed, not armored, not invincible, but deeply, quietly whole. Carl Jung once wrote, "Enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious." And now, with more awareness, you return to the same life, but walk through it differently. You still make decisions, but with less rigidity. You still feel fear, but no longer obey it. You still experience longing, but no longer let it define you. Because now you know, life isn't a problem to solve. It's a field to walk through, with open hands. You'll notice old habits resurface. You'll feel the urge to grip again, to predict, to demand outcomes. That's okay. This isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing differently when the moment comes. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our opinions about them. Now you hold that wisdom, not as a quote, but as a way of being. You no longer strive for control, you strive for clarity. You don't seek certainty, you anchor in presence. You're not afraid to feel, because you've learned that feeling doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. This is the practice, to live with full attention, to allow contradiction, to stay awake even when it would be easier to numb out. You begin to speak more honestly, rest more deeply, care more gently. You begin to forgive yourself for not knowing sooner, and thank yourself for not giving up. Because in the end, this was never about control. It was about connection. To life, to others, to the ground beneath your feet and the breath in your chest. So when life throws you into the fog again, and it will, you no longer freeze. You drive forward anyway, not because you know what's coming, but because you trust the one who's behind the wheel now. And that changes everything. Because the goal was never to dominate life. The goal was to dance with it, with bare feet and open hands, and a heart brave enough to be broken. This is the quiet power that remains when control dissolves. Not the power to force, but the power to face, not to fix the future, but to meet it fully, freely, here. Now, welcome home. If this resonated, don't let it disappear. Hit like so YouTube knows to show you more like this. And subscribe if you want more tools for the mind and soul. This is Semantic Soul. We go slow. We go deep. We go real.